Hey guys, welcome back. It's KJ from the Scariest Movie Ever channel here on YouTube. For how much longer, we'll see. It's been a crazy ride these last few days. We're going to get into some of that stuff. You may be asking yourself, though, at this point, what is the wanting seed and why does it matter? I imagine some of you probably looked it up and you found out it was from an author named Anthony Burgess. He's published tons of works. But the wanting seed is the one that's always really stood out for me. I read it years ago. And as many other writers of his time, it was what they call a dystopian novel. This one was written back in 1962. And we see a lot of these stories of dystopia coming out of the 50s and 60s, futuristic novels. And just going off of the definition here, dystopia is a community or society that is undesirable or frightening. It is translated as not good place and is an antonym of utopia, a term that was coined by Sir Thomas More and figures as the title of, all right. Anyway, we get the basics, we get the gist. So not a good place to be. And typically in these dystopian novels, it's an oppressive government force. Oftentimes the people are used and abused. And those that are left spend most of their time high on some kind of an intoxicant. He also wrote the book A Clockwork Orange. Now, that's probably how most of you are familiar with his work in the first place, because they made a movie out of it. And that film as well was way, way beyond its time, or before its time. If you look even over here at the image from one of the movie posters, and it's got the pyramid with the all-seeing eye up there, and this was made a really long time ago. That's just one example. They use a lot of the pyramid in the original movie posters as well, and the all-seeing eye. And of course, in the movie, they have all the rest of the so-called Illuminati symbolism. I call it beast system symbolism now. But the all-seeing eye, of course, right here you see Malcolm McDowell with the all-seeing eye symbolism, and they had the black and white tiled floors, the lady in red, and they even had the sacrifice. So, it was all in there. These people knew, a lot of these people knew and understood. And if we were alive back then, we would have been these people. We would have been talking about these things in different ways and trying to get it out there. I believe that. Now, in some cases, it could be controlled. Some of these people may have been controlled, but, you judge you judge people's fruits, all right, not what people say about them. And you look at Burgess's work, and it's incredible. He even wrote a book called 1985, a kind of tongue-in-cheek follow-up to 1984, but very serious. So that's just a little bit of a background on him. Let's just jump right into it here with The Wanting Seed. And this is a summary. And you'll see why The Wanting Seed is more relevant now than ever before. So we'll go through this, and then I got a few other things I just want to piece together and share with you guys. And let's take a look at the bigger picture here, what's going on with a lot of the new censorship and also the change in people's attitudes. Civility is going out the door. We're seeing much more violence and calls for violence now, it seems. So here we go. Grab your favorite drink, or your favorite whatever I guess you use to calm down at the end of the day. Hopefully not a pharmaceutical or heroin or anything like that, but something that will keep you calm but still awake and not completely alter your state of consciousness. And let's check into The Wanting Seed. There's no beating around the bush in The Wanting Seed. The novel gets off to a grim start as Beatrice Joanne Fox watches the dead body of her infant son get packed off to the Ministry of Agriculture, where it'll be turned into fertilizer. As Beatrice Joanna struggles to manage her grief, the State Health Service staff shuttle her out as quickly as they can. In a world where human beings outweigh the global food supply, no modern person cries over one less mouth to feed. As Beatrice Joanna leaves the State Health Service, she treats the gay and lesbian staff with instinctive loathing and prejudice. Everywhere she looks, London, England, is full of propaganda encouraging homosexuality. Same-sex relations may help to keep the population down, but to her, they seem unnatural and unclean. As Beatrice Joanna heads from the State Health Service to the Ministry of Infertility, her husband, Tristram Fox, starts the day's shift at the boys' school where he teaches modern history. A senior colleague of his has recently died, and Tristram is sure he'll be promoted in his position. After filing her son's death certificate at the Ministry of Infertility, Beatrice Joanna makes a date with Tristram's brother, Derek Fox, a high-ranking ministry official with whom she's been having an affair. Meanwhile, back at the boys' school, Tristram learns that he won't be getting that promotion after all. As it turns out, not being gay is a serious liability. In Beatrice Joanna and Tristram's apartment, Beatrice Joanna and Derek sleep together, and Beatrice Joanna forgets to use her birth control. Tristram leaves work early and heads to a pub where he gets drunk and witnesses an act of police brutality. By the time he gets home, the world looks pretty awful from his point of view. Beatrice Joanna feels instinctively that she's now pregnant with Derek's child, and so just to be on the safe side, she sleeps with Tristram too. Sounds like a Steve Wilkos episode, doesn't it? But this is real life, I guess, too. Unfortunately, it's been quite a day for both of them. In the months that follow Beatrice Joanna's pregnancy is confirmed, Tristram believes the child is his and insists that Beatrice Joanna induce a miscarriage. He's terrified because the government is cracking down on men and women who don't abide by the strict population laws, and life in the city is getting very dangerous for families. Captain Loosely, one of Derek's rivals at the Ministry of Infertility, snitches to Tristram about Derek and Beatrice Joanna's affair. Tristram is furious. He confronts Beatrice Joanna in the street outside their apartment building, but before they can really have it out, Tristram gets swept up in a labor protest that's marching through the street. While Beatrice Joanna slips inside, Tristram is caught in the violence that breaks out when the police attack the protesters, and he's soon carted off to jail. Beatrice Joanna flees to her sister and brother-in-law's farm in Northern Province, intending to wait out her illegal pregnancy there. Meanwhile, Tristram is stuck in prison, and Derek makes sure he'll be there for a long time. 7 months later, Beatrice Joanna gives birth to twin boys, whom she names Derek and Tristram. As Tristram escapes from prison with the help of an altruistic cellmate, Beatrice Joanna and the twins are captured by Captain Loosely and the population police, who hope to discredit Derek by exposing his heterosexuality and paternity. Tristram makes his way north, hoping to reunite with Beatrice Joanna. At the same time, Beatrice Joanna and the twins are moving south with Captain Loosely and the population police. As Tristram moves through England's rural villages, he realizes that cannibalism and ritualistic heterosexual fertility rites have become the new norm. Priests are preaching the doctrine that all life is one, and villagers are trying to counteract the crop blight by sowing a little seed of their own. Tristram finally makes it to Beatrice Joanna's relatives, only to discover that she and the twins are long gone. As he starts to make his way back towards London, he's tricked into joining the British Army. Tristram spends several months as a sergeant instructor in the army, giving the troops basic training in reading, writing, and arithmetic. When his superior officers learn that he's also trying to teach the soldiers critical thinking, he's transferred to a rifle company and shipped out for action. None of this makes any sense to Tristram, as war has been outlawed on Earth for generations. Tristram and his company are shipped into unknown territory and told that they'll be marching to the front soon. One of the other officers recognizes the air and the landscape and tells Tristram he's sure they're on the west coast of Ireland. Tristram is sure that this is, quote, war. Tristram is sure that this war is all just a pretense and that he and the other soldiers are going to be killed off by their own people somehow. He and his company march to the trenches, and when the battle begins, Tristram is horrified to see that the enemy is a battalion of English women. Tristram survives the massacre and manages to make his way back to England. After his one-year contract with the British Army expires, Tristram heads to the London War Office to be discharged and swears that he'll expose what the army is doing. The major who discharges him isn't too concerned. After all, they're all just following orders from the Global Population Limitation Authority. Equipped with his discharge papers and his back pay, Tristram heads back to Brighton. He finds himself a new teaching job and a new apartment, then goes to look for Beatrice Joanna at the seashore, where he knows she walks with the twins each afternoon. Beatrice Joanna and Tristram reunite, and they live happily ever after in a world where human fecundity is celebrated. The surplus population is shipped off to fake wars called extermination sessions, and the dead corpses are sold to capitalists running cannibalistic meat canning factories. and they all lived happily ever after. Or wait, just kidding. It's a pretty bleak ending to a pretty bleak story. So there you go. That's the summary, quick summary of the book, The Wanting Seed. Isn't it interesting, how much of this lines up with things we're actually seeing take place right now, today in our real world? And I'll be referencing this a little bit. Let's make a jump. I think right there is where I wanted to go. Let's see.
Hey everyone, we plan to continue our work on
sorry, one second. I'm going to be coming back to that. Yeah, so The Wanting Seed, again, it's a great book. It's very interesting, especially with one thing they didn't mention in the summary is the police force. It's a total homosexual police force, and they call them the Gray Boys, and they're some of the most vicious people out there. So there's tons of police brutality throughout the book, especially on heterosexuals. So it's very interesting, a very different take, isn't it? But is it really that different? Like I said, there's so many things that are foreshadowed throughout that book. Even the talk of cannibalism and Soylent Green. You've heard of Soylent Green, the book and the movie. That Soylent Green is people. So we've seen a lot of that. I covered, I think it was one of my recent videos, I showed you guys a recent news story where they are now calling for human composting. There's a group that's wanting to start doing human composting. You can look that up right now for yourself. Look up real life human composting, and I'm sure you'll find it. So check that out. Here's something else I wanted to take a look at. You've probably heard of this before, Communist 45 Goals to Destroy the U.S. Here's where it originated from. On January 10th, 1963, Congressman Albert S. Herlong Jr. of Florida read a list of 45 communist goals into the congressional record. The list was derived from researcher Cleon Skousen's book, The Naked Communist. These principles are well worth revisiting today in order to gain insights into the thinking and strategies of much of our so-called liberal elite. I'm not going to go through all these. I highlighted a few. Check these out. These are some of the communist goals to destroy America, right? Get control of the schools, use them as a transmission belt for socialism and current communist propaganda, soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations, and put the party line in textbooks. And we already know they're changing history all the time. Gosh, what is the one program for kids in school that has really been dumbing them down especially over Obama's administration? I can't remember the term right now, but I'm sure you guys are probably throwing it in chat right now. But it's one of the new school programs where it's like 1 + 1 can be 5 if that's what you think it is, right? So I'm sure you guys know which one I'm talking about. It just escapes me the name of it right now. Anyway, getting control of all student newspapers, use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations that are under communist attack, infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions, infiltrate the press, interesting. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures, check, 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 it seems. Again, judging by the fruits. There's many arms to this beast system. It really is like a mini tentacled beast. And I just see all these different elements working together, various secret societies, and also this move here with socialism, which is really communism we're seeing right now, especially here in America. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all form of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to, quote, this sounds familiar too, eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substituting shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. I did a video a few years ago, first the statues, then the churches, how they're erasing history. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art, quote unquote. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and violation of free speech and free press. The last two are really important. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV, and present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. So these are some of the goals. I want to make a quick point here too. Speaking of these things, and I've had to make this point in the past, this is in no way like a hatred towards the homosexuals. The way I look at it through my reference points, I follow Christ. I read the Bible for myself. I've been following his ways for a very long time. I try, it's hard for me to use the term Christian because so many people, I feel, maybe misuse it, or there's even a difference there because there's Christianity in a lot of ways is a created religion. We know this with Easter and everything else. So, I'm very careful to call myself that, but I'm a follower of Christ. That's how I see it. And homosexuality is considered a sin in the Bible. Okay, so I don't hate people that are gay. I have some family that are gay as well. Worked with a lot of gay people and was friends with them out in Los Angeles when I worked out there in Hollywood many years ago. So I don't look at it like that. The Bible tells us all sins equal. So I don't put one against the other. We're all struggling in something. So that's why we really do have to love each other. You still love them. We don't love the sin. But beside that, and here's the tough part for people, elements of the homosexual community are being weaponized now. And this is what they do. And there's always fringe groups of every culture and subculture. And there's crazy, wacky Christians. There's crazy, wacky Muslims. There's crazy, wacky everything. There's always fringe elements. But, those elements these days, it seems in every single way, are being weaponized to separate people, put us into groups. It's like a tribalism, and then turn us against each other. We fight their fight for them, So, but with this, they're weaponizing it, and we see it in our culture. We know that this is what's happening right now. It's abundantly clear. So I want to share that as well. Now we're going to jump around a little bit here. So going from there, here's something else I thought was pretty interesting. I'm just going to read a few of the top paragraphs here. I was looking this term up earlier. You've probably heard it before, right? Cultural Marxism. So check this story out. I thought as I looked, this person that wrote this article had the same experience I did. I haven't looked the term up in a long time. When I did, I found something interesting. Started doing more digging, then I found this story, and it's like this guy was saying the same thing I did. This will make sense in a second. Last week, I did one of my routine exercises in my Marxism course at Grove City College. In that class, we scour everything on Marx and various strains and offshoots of Marxism. We read all sides: true liberal learning, real diversity, genuine academic pursuit of truth. At this conservative college, we look at all sides, which is what liberal universities claim to do, but under the flag of diversity and tolerance, frequently shun opposing viewpoints that conflict with leftist orthodoxy. Sorry, take a breath. My Marxism course is an interactive course class in which we pull up the big computer screen and openly Google terms, ideas, websites, and organizations. We do not shy away ever from daily checking. The website of Communist Party USA, the Jacobin, the Militant, you name it. We don't fear and censor opposing viewpoints. My students will not be left ignorant of what the other side thinks. Last week, here's the point here. Last week at some point every semester, I Googled the words cultural Marxism. I was shocked when the first thing that appeared on the page was this boxed definition. And this is what I saw when I looked it up too. Cultural Marxism conspiracy theory, it says. In contemporary usage, the term cultural Marxism refers to an anti-that conspiracy theory, which claims that the Frankfurt School is part of a continual academic and intellectual effort to undermine and destroy Western culture. I had never heard cultural Marxism referred to as that before. Anti-Semitic, ever. Whoa, seriously? After years of looking up cultural Marxism, I had not seen that whopper. An anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Says who? That's not a definition. It's an ad hominem. Actually, it's a cheap smear. It's a smear that countless millions will see daily as their go-to definition for cultural Marxism. It gets worse. The link then charges that this conspiracy theory is associated with American religious paleo-conservatives such as William Lind, Pat Buchanan, and Paul Weyrich, but also holds currency among the alt-right, white nationalist groups and neo-reactionary. All right. Okay, sure. So see, now you see, he's like, yeah, no kidding. The neo-reactionary movement, what's that? For years, I've known about cultural Marxism. My first tutorial on it and the entirety of the Frankfurt School came from Herb Romerstein, a friend and mentor to whom I dedicated my book, Dupes. Never did Herb say that the charge of cultural Marxism was a slimy anti-Jewish plot. He walked me through the leading lights in the Frankfurt School, and he didn't single out which ones. All right. So anyway, that's about that. I think you get the point. But like I said, man, I mean, the truth, obviously, it's such an understatement, but truth is so under attack in so many ways right now. Interesting times. Let's bounce around from that idea and go a few more places here. Let's go down here. Okay, so now that we're caught up on the wanting seed, we took a look at some of the ways that the communists will try to destroy America from way back in the 60s. Now we have this right here. Socialist group celebrates literally no straight people. The Young Democratic Socialists of America chapter at Texas State University boasted on Twitter about not having any straight members on its e-board and coordinating committee after calling to, quote, guillotine the bourgeois traitors. So there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack. Now, again, I've shown for years throughout my videos the way they're using elements of, they're straight up just using homosexuality, and this will be a major part of, I believe, the final system, the New World Order system being created quickly before our very eyes. It's not fully matured yet, but this is going to be a part of it. I'll show you a bit more on that in a second. But it's a fascist side of this, right? Coming out. We're seeing some of it right here. Also about the guillotines, I'll come back to that too. The YDSA chapter of Texas State University published a Happy Pride Month post on its Twitter account Monday, along with an alternative acronym for LGBT. Let's guillotine bourgeois traitors. There's the pictures. So this will be, here's what it really comes down to. The easiest way for me to explain it, the way I see it. I've been saying it for years, but we're literally seeing a separation between the sheep and the goats, or the wheat and the tares. People are choosing their sides whether they realize it or not. And this isn't about partisan politics. That's how it's always framed, right versus left. This is far beyond all that. Far beyond, I believe. Let's guillotine bourgeois traitors. Even with that, it's interesting. I've seen a lot of this, and you guys know I do a weekly, well, now it's every couple of weeks, but I'll be bringing it back to a week here soon. But I do a news type show, and I cover some different kinds of news from all around, but we're always finding stories, at least every few weeks, talking about guillotines or talking about beheadings and just strange things like this. Even right here, this right here comes to mind. This is Jared Leto from the recent Met Gala 2019 was walking around with his own head, right? And the fashion industry obviously is run by the enemy. It's run by Satan. This is obvious. I've talked about this for years, shown the symbols, shown the meanings. Many others have as well. It's pretty obvious to a lot of us. So we find this kind of symbolism there. It's interesting. We also saw it a year before, right here at a Gucci show. Why are these Gucci models holding their own heads? And I know that, not fun to think about the possibilities, but I just always draw different connections and understanding we're in an end times scenario. We're seeing all these things that are unfolding before our very eyes that are biblical, whether you believe or not. I mean, these things are still happening. And we know that beheadings are in Revelation as a part of the fully matured beast system. That's going to be a part of it. If you don't want to take the mark or be a part of the system, this is what happens. Anyway, that's just the way I see some of this stuff from time to time. This was interesting here too. These to make a point as well, just about society in general. Look at how people behaved back then, and you can't tell yourself that it can't happen now. These macabre guillotine earrings were all the rage during France's reign of terror. These gold and gilded metal guillotine earrings from 1793 depict the Phrygian cap on top and the crowned, decapitated heads of the king and queen dangling below, with 16,594 executions taking place between June 1793 and July 1794. The guillotine was the emblem of the reign of terror during the French Revolution. It was both metaphorical and literal. Let's take a look at them real quick. There you go, ladies. Actually, guys, for that special lady in your life, that birthday's coming up, huh? Christmas, not too far away. Nice little stocking stuffer there for that special lady in your life. Let's continue here. The guillotine superbly exemplified and epitomized the vital need for rupture, which constituted the condition and promise for remaking the world. Laura Marat writes in The Man Who Thought He Was Napoleon, as a modern machine derived from the laws of geometry and gravity, it promised an egalitarian democratic death. It put a permanent end to the hierarchy of punishments under the ancient regime, which sentenced witches and arsonists to be burned at the stake. Something else I was wanting to get here too. That's not it. Let's go down here. Okay, here we go. It's the stuff I wanted to get to. Barbaric or not, people loved the guillotine. When the Reign of Terror began taking heads on an average of 46 per day, man, that is crazy. Including Louis and Marie Antoinette, the terrifying instrument of swift death became part of everyday life. It was the subject of art, music, and fashion. It was depicted, recounted, and bandied about by popular songs with their series of refrains on the widow, the national razor, the patriotic haircut, the sword of equality, and the altar of the nation. People no longer referred to, quote, being guillotined, but spoke of sticking your head through the cat flap, poking through the window, or sneezing into the basket, har, har, har. Like tricolor skirts and nosegays or jewelry set with chunks from the Bastille. Jane Merrill, Chris Philstrip write, the guillotines testified to a person's daring and being on the winning side, I guess in reference to the symbols of the earrings here. So yeah, people loved the guillotines. They made wacky songs, even made funny little catchphrases, memes for them back then, I guess you could say. Ancient memes over how much they laughed at the guillotines and loved the guillotines. So yeah. All right, so let's bounce from that. Go back over here. We got that one out. Now let's go ahead and jump over here into this. Wait, here we go. We'll go here first. Okay, so something else I've noticed just over the last week, and it falls into line again with kind of what I've been seeing and also talking about for a few years now, is that, you know, we're in that time, again, where there's a separation taking place. And it's coming to a point where people have to, I believe, either acknowledge God or be with God through Jesus Christ, or they're on the other side of that. And that's just how I see it. You know, this is how it's all shaping up. And we're starting to see signs of that in some very interesting ways. This right here is a channel, Computing Forever. And I've been subbed to this guy for a few years. Good content. I've always liked his content. He's been clumped in with, I guess, alt-right type people or whatever. And he's very vocal about what YouTube does to his channel. But all this time, I kind of assumed he was an atheist. I'd never heard him speak of his faith. So for him to come out and make this video was a really big deal. He did this on June 5th, Rediscovering Faith, My Journey Back to Christianity. Thought it was a beautiful testimony. I was so happy that he shared it. And, you know, again, it just goes to show, you know, at least me, it's like, all right, you know, people I think they're starting to see it. You know, it's time to start coming out more with this. It's time to start talking more about our faith and putting this in the right frame of reference, everything that's happening in the world right now. It's not just Republicans and Democrats. You know, we're beyond all that. I think most of that's been exposed by now, right? Just some people choose to still live in that kind of a matrix. You know, they don't want to peek out. But everything happening now to me is very spiritual. You know, we're seeing a lot of signs of this. So Computing Forever, great video. If you want to go check it out, My Journey Back to Christianity. And then here's Dan Dix from Press for Truth. I've been subbed to him a long time as well. He also recently got demonetized. So did compute. I think Computing Forever did. I'm not sure, but I know Dan did. And a lot of people did just over the last few days. It's been crazy, and they're saying they're coming after more channels and everything else. And man, running a YouTube channel used to not be stressful. It used to be a joy, like the joy of your life, uploading and sharing stuff with the community and, talking to each other. But it's definitely got a lot of stressful elements now to it. We see the effects of that. We've seen a lot of channels just disappear. Some of them didn't want to, but got taken out. And it's just really, really crazy times. So those of us that are left, we really appreciate your prayers, your support, all of it, man. Thank you so much for your prayers and support for my channel and my work, and I hope you do the same for others as well. So anyway, but Dan, I think I'd always known he had faith. He didn't talk a lot about it at all, but it was interesting because same, what is this? I think it was on the 5th as well. Yeah, June 5th as well. He comes out with this video. He's got the shirt there. It's kind of funny. It's Jesus with the sunglasses on. I'll be back. But he's talking about his faith a bit in this video as well. So, he's even kind of changing the way that this is being framed, or seeing the way that it's truly being framed, and just talking about it. I think it's fantastic. So like I said, I think he's always been a faithful type guy, but it's just, now, like I said, we're living at a time where it's like, I think people need to start coming out more with it, putting in that frame of reference, because I believe that's what is happening. We're seeing the whole system. Like I said, it all started off with one thing, and now we're seeing so many other people getting taken out and silenced. And ultimately, I think that's what it is. It's going to be about just truth, because we're living at a time right now. Here's something I'll show real quick. We're living at a time right now where, the truth just doesn't matter at all to a lot of people. All right. The tares, the goats. I see stuff like this. Pelosi, again, not a political person, but showing what level this has come to. Pelosi tells Dems she wants to see Trump in prison. They spent $27 million, couldn't prove the collusion thing. And they can't impeach him, although they keep talking about that. And now they're talking about just forget it, throw him in prison, and they got nothing on him. And whether you think this is all just made up stuff or not, this is the way it's coming out. Okay. And it just makes you wonder. All the civility is gone. It's just completely disappeared. People are no longer being, courteous. All right. That's out the door. Like, it's just in your face, straight up lies. Don't even care anymore. Let's just put the guy in prison. It's a spirit. This is the Antichrist spirit, and it manifesting more and more in our world through lots of different people. And, even here, speaking of which, this is interesting. Speaking of which, even the symbolism right here, interesting, right? But this is the Carlos Maza guy that started the whole thing through Vox and was complaining. He's with Vox. Started the fight with Steven Crowder, and we all know the rest by now. You've heard of the Vox apocalypse or whatever. The third YouTube adpocalypse, the new one. But, this isn't even so much about all that at all. It's just right here. Like, he calls himself a Marxist pig. A Marxist pig. And in the real world, that'd be considered very dangerous. That is dangerous. He's a part of that system. Anyway, they're just straight up about it. Marxism. That's for later.
I came out in high school.
Here's something. We'll just take a look at a couple images. But even this, again, pushing this agenda, the LGB and everything else, pushing the agenda more. Because these will be the people, I believe, many of the people I believe in the fully realized beast system. Once the lawless one is revealed, be a lot of people like this will be in charge. And the Christians and others who don't want to be a part of that system, i.e., not taking the mark, will be subjugated. Or they'll try to. There'll be some people are going to be fighting, some people are going to be hiding, some people will be getting them heads lopped. Now, I didn't make this up. I know it's not fun to talk about this stuff sometimes, but we know that's in Revelation. We see that. We see that as the end, as part of the end time scenario. And is it all just a coincidence that we see all these things lining up with it now, even an Antichrist spirit working through people, where people are just becoming more cruel and hateful and angry and losing all their love? Anyway, it's always the pyramid, and you got the reflection. I've talked about this in even recent videos, the reflecting pool. This is the diamond. So it's the as above, so below paradigm. It's bringing hell on earth. You may not have heard of that before. Check out some of my videos sometime. I go into a lot more detail. Anyway, this is kind of the new thing. I thought I'd seen something else in here I want to share. No, just more of the as above, so below obviousness stuff, right? So we see a lot of the as above, so below all around, especially in entertainment right now, because that's the message. It's part of the imprinting, but it's actually what's happening. It's as above, so below. And also, this story just came out fairly recently. Pastor arrested preaching against homosexuality. And this may be a different one. I think this is it. It happened in, the one I'm thinking of happened in Canada. Yeah, this is it. Pastor David Lynn of Christ Forgiveness Ministries was arrested on June 4th, 2019 for preaching the gospel publicly in Toronto, Canada. The neighborhood he was preaching in was Church Wesley Village. This neighborhood is known to be a place where many of the LGBT and the rest community in Toronto reside. His ministry is currently on an outdoor preaching tour throughout the 22 districts of Toronto. All right, anyway. Yeah, so just an example. I mean, he was out there preaching, I guess, and got arrested for it, for hate speech, most likely. I don't know. Anyway, there you go. So we see some of that. We see more of the agenda work and stories like this here. MTV to debut first American sexually fluid reality show with Are You the One Season 8. So everyone's hooking up with everyone, regardless of sexuality. And again, this is a part of the push. This is the Aquarian age. Welcome to the Aquarian age. Age of the Antichrist, as they say. Here's a couple other things here. Kind of a follow-up, man. I talked about special books by special kids last week, or not last week, but in my last broadcast, and how they've had all their comments disabled now because they feature minors. But all these minors are children that have really, like special disabilities and things like this. So yeah, so they needed that community. That was part of the whole point. Anyway, so just this goes back to, this is something interesting I found, though. This is kind of beyond all that. This is proof to you, okay, through SBCK, interesting proof through them that YouTube does have a naughty list and is putting a lot of people on it. So let me just kind of show you what I found here. Give me a second, Noel.
Lives. And tonight, we need your help to ensure that this is possible. What is Patreon and what is art? That will mean the freedom to create the content you love. We learned recently that that's just not a sustainable model, and we're going to detail
Crowdfunding website that allows you to support your faith.
It's just truly scary. We've been working on this for 4 years. We spent
Thanks for your
if we're
patience.
placed into an alternative algorithm again,
Okay, there we go.
tied together, we should switch. Someone can turn you off, and it's just truly
Okay, here we go. Thank you for your patience. Just listen to what they're saying. This is really interesting.
scary. We've been working on this for 4 years. We spend almost every single hour of every day on this mission. And then to learn that just by flipping a switch, someone can turn you off. And YouTube is our primary source of funding as a nonprofit.
Hold on, guys.
With all of these things tied together, we just had no choice. If we're placed into an alternative algorithm again, we might never come back this time.
I have no idea what just happened. Give me a second here. I've never seen that happen before. Hold on.